Welcome back to the Smite Pro League. We're halfway through the day. Dignitas just took down Splice in 5 long games. Now me and Toli are here to host the desk for you while we look at Trifecta versus Pittsburgh Knights.
Going to be a very interesting matchup between these two compared to how opposite ends they are between Trifecta and PK. PK coming off a loss, though, up against Dignitas yesterday. Could be a question of their morale going into this set,
Sure.
but up against Trifecta, they've also struggled as well, finding their defeat against United.
A lot of Jormungandr played in the last match, and if you want to take home the Ragnarok Jormungandr, you can go ahead and grab that in one of the chests that we have available for you. Council of the Gods has showed you some of the stuff on display, so you can check out some of the nice plays here at the pro level, and then bring them home and at least look good in your own games. So watching Trifecta and Knights tonight should be very interesting. Two teams on very opposite ends of the spectrum as far as the standings are concerned. And what I'm looking for out of Trifecta is to stand up to what the Knights have been able to bring so often. Adapting Zyrhoes, the squad has looked really strong throughout the course of the beginning of the Pro League here, Toli. And what I'm expecting out of the Knights is pretty much of the same.
Well, Knights were able to handle some of the early game shenanigans that the Season 6 meta was able to throw out in their first couple of sets, specifically also against Space Station Gaming. But Trifecta has been very strong in the early game against United. Despite losing up against United, they gave them a run for their money, I want to say, yesterday. So I think Adapting is going to have to really be prepared for some of this early pressure.
That's what we're going to look for. Trifecta, you heard them kind of say that's really what they're looking for, and that's where they play strongly. And Pittsburgh Knights, as you said, should be able to respond. But I want to see what other things Pittsburgh Knights are going to really bring out. I've had a lot of good fun watching what Zyrhoes is doing in the mid lane. The Jormungandr mid was really powerful when he brought it out a couple of days ago. And, seeing Adapting try different things. The Hebo, which is admittedly similar to his God Pool, but never really something that he plays too tall and well. He turns it around last time and actually wins the game off of it. So I want to see Knights be really creative going forward and see what they can bring.
And something also I want to see out of them is specifically Vote, as well as EmilZy, trying to be a little bit aggressive in the early laning phase. I feel like they've just kind of been a little bit passive, not really getting much out of that lane specifically.
Sure. Yeah, it's been tough there for Pittsburgh Knights, of course. But watching the whole squad come together, Deathwalker has been really strong on the short side. Every one of these guys, an all-star in their own right. And there's the man, Joachim. The mid lane, Zyrhoes, very strong out of Sweden, now coming down here in 9-6 so far as the win-loss record. Games, of course, for the Pittsburgh Knights. They are sitting up there, I believe, in the 3rd spot as far as the standings are concerned, and Zyrhoes has been a big part of it.
And I think it just comes down to Stealth Gods, right? Like, if he's not going to be playing the Morrigan, he's definitely going to be playing this Jormungandr. So you got to always keep him under your radar. It's not to say that he can't play other things as well. Like, he loves to play Thoth, these long-range artillery gods. I'm expecting Ryzen potentially to be contested between these two. Lasbra could be looking for that pick.
Ryzen has been a number one pick for a while, but then kind of dissipates as we see different gods come in and out. You see Merlin show up, and a lot of Poseidon recently, who's a character that always goes with the ebb and flow of the meta, so to speak. So watching what Zyrhoes has been able to pick out should be fun, and where he wants to opt should be very interesting across the way. You've got Trifecta, who've got a number of players to stand up to. But sticking on the Knights conversation, what do you expect out of Adapting? Do you think Adapting is going to be the same jungler that we've seen him be?
I think so. I think he's just going to play his game, whether it's the Arachne to surprise the early game or the late game focus of the Hobwise. You can never really tell where Adapting is going to go because the other key elements of his team composition, Deathwalker potentially in the Soul Lane could play aggressive, knowing if he gets Achilles or Camisards, that Adapting could kind of lean on that Soul Lane, or unless Vote is going to be looking to find some solo kills of himself. We haven't really seen the Season 5 Vote, but up against Trifecta and specifically Wowy, we might see that today.
Well, we're going to get into the game in just a little bit, but before we watch them play, let's talk to them. Deathwalker standing by for the pregame interview.
All right, standing by with Deathwalker here, the solo laner for Pittsburgh Knights. Before we get into this set, Deathwalker, I want to ask you, does it feel a little bit better watching Dignitas do the exact same thing to Splice that they did to you yesterday?
Well, I guess it feels better, but I kind of feel bad for Splice at the same time. I know that feeling, man. Oof, they gambled Fire Giant plenty of times, but Dignitas won every single gamble. Like, it's so frustrating when you lose every objective whenever they're close to it.
So lucky, man. Just so lucky. Nothing you can do about that. But let's talk about your team, though, and the mentality. A little bit of a tough loss yesterday, but how's the team feeling going into this set against Trifecta?
We all feel confident going into this set. We've seen Trifecta play a couple of sets now. Most importantly, the last time they played against United. Usually they have really good early games. I think that's because of Weekend. I think we're probably going to be looking to target him out in bans. Teams have been banning out his Ratatosker and stuff like that. So I think as long as we keep him in check, we should be fine. He also seems to be like their leadership. Yeah. He's the most experienced player on that team. So as long as he's kind of in check, we should be good, I think.
Have you been impressed with Trifecta so far? Because they had a bit of a rough start to the season, but every set they seem to get better and better. Have you been impressed with what you've seen from them?
Nope.
No, easy for him. Why should he be? It's Deathwalker, man. It's Pittsburgh Knights. Good luck, man. I'm looking forward to it. Throw it back to Tom on the desk.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. Always good to hear the thoughts of Deathwalker. And really, I like the respect he tossed at Weekend because you're right. There is no reason to really be super impressed with what Trifecta have brought to the table up to this point. But as what Aggro was getting at was that each time we've seen the Trifecta squad come out, they have looked to improve. And most specifically yesterday, Weekend looked really strong. Almost all positive slash lines. He really was able to do what they wanted to do in the early game.
A couple of important key notes that Deathwalker said was the early game strength from Trifecta. It's not only Weekend specifically, even though the idea is to ban him out in the interview with Eonic. You have to keep in mind for him, he is the reason why United struggled with all his level 1 shenanigans, stealing away the speed buff, I think, in 2 of the 3 games. And you're right, F-Dot, like, up against the set against SK, even though Trifecta lost 0-3, it didn't look like an 0-3 loss. No. Up against Space Station Gaming, they lost 2-3, very close games throughout, almost finding the set victory. Then yesterday against United, yet again another 0-3 loss, but they could have easily won those first 2 games.
Yeah, the Trifecta guys, and this is an example of what to expect in the early game, is actually United's team fight. And Weekend comes in, body blocks a couple of shots, finds a good zigzag, gets 1 kill, and then the follow-up thanks to some of the dots, and you're always going to get a little bit of that saltiness at a Weekend. So that's what to expect out of these Trifecta guys in the early game. And as the game goes later, they have a little bit more trouble kind of sticking to it. But each game they play brings it closer and closer home.
And honestly, for Ducky out of Trifecta, he's been having a very difficult matchups because he's been facing off against King Arthur. And a lot of that comes down to like, oh, okay, he's going to play Camazotz, it's no problem, and deal with it. But in team fights specifically, I would rather have a little bit more AoE damage from my solo laner than the single target focus.
Well, here's Weekend. That's the guy that Trifecta are going to, or excuse me, Pittsburgh Knights are going to try and focus out in picks and bans. Weekend's been a powerful catalyst for that early game. So take a look at his Arachnes, take a look at his Ratataskers, and some of the other options that Weekend likes to go. The Circuit, I think, also should be on your mind when playing against this man. I mean, this is where he's kind of been successful, and that's where they're going to be looking as well. So Trifecta is a team that I think rallies behind Weekend, rallies behind Eonic, but really rallies behind all of themselves. But one thing that I think that Deathwalker said is absolutely true is that the leadership there is most likely to come from Weekend. Eonic, the other veteran on the team, but has had a large chunk since his last time playing at the Pro League level. So Weekend's been playing as long as Eonic, but consistently as well. And I think a combination of that consistency, some old school style winnings, and just an understanding of how the game is played, he can help Lasbra in his sophomore season. He can help Eonic coming back to the game verbally and in sort of that conversational aspect.
And Lasbra needs to be able to be more comfortable in that middle position. He got focused out very heavily against United. It was great early focus on terms of United's red buffs in the previous set yesterday, but with the Jean-Qui picks for Lasbra, you could tell like maybe that's not necessarily his style, having to deal with Zyrhoes there.
Well, we spoke to the Pittsburgh Knights just a little while ago. Before we get into it, we'll talk to Trifecta as well right about now.
All right, standing by with Coach K, Coach Kassir here for Trifecta. Kassir, how did you get started coaching Trifecta? Because this all kind of happened pretty quickly by the public's eyes.
Yeah, well, I joined when we played against SK, so I helped them a little bit, but I was doing trials, so I didn't do too much. And then we started improving, and they are working a lot, so it's really easy to improve as a team. And I feel like we are just working slowly and improving really fast, more than I thought.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you guys, from set 1 to even yesterday, you take the 3-0, the loss, but you played so much better. What have you seen that's been the biggest difference in the beginning of the season to now for Trifecta?
We know how to play the early game because when we played against SK, we were like, okay, we don't have an idea to play the early game, like we don't know. Then against SSG, we start practicing the early game more and more and more, and then for 10 games yesterday, we practiced the mid game and late game, but we need to improve a lot the decision making and a little bit the vision, how we fight that. And I guess that right now for today games, I think that we are fine because yesterday we get a lot of mistakes and we correct them.
How about Pittsburgh Knights, though? I mean, it's a pretty tough opponent across the way. From the coach's perspective, what have you seen from them so far?
I mean, they are a really good team with really good players, but I feel like they have a lot of mistakes because they are a new team. So I feel like we can invade them, we can attack them really easy in the early game, and in the late game we are just improving a lot. So I think that, yeah, we can make a 3-1, 3-0. I think that we can make it.
Coach Case, I'm feeling pretty confident, as he should be. Trifecta's playing a lot better. Thank you very much, man. Good luck to you. So back to Tom on the desk.
There he is, throwing up the horns. Gotta love it. And, you know, the story behind this guy is real fun. If you haven't really been following from last season, he was coaching Lasbra's minor league team. Lasbra's playing for Insignum, the European minor league team. One team makes it and tries to vie for a world's position. And they started beating a couple of teams, and they ran into some trouble. And the coach actually had to play in the games.
Yeah.
And he won the games. They ultimately do wind up faltering. But as Lasbra gets called up to the Pro League and looks to make a statement here, then Coach Cassier just kind of follows suit, and things have been looking up a little bit more for Trifecta.
And that was also against Trifecta in Season 5, Zatman's team that's now SK Gaming. So a funny little story between these two.
Kind of fun interaction, and we'll get to where the coach does all his dirty work. The picks and bans here, Pittsburgh Knights on the first pick, and something that as I mentioned that I'm going to directly shoot it down, something that I liked about Coach Cassier over there was, a lot of people have the idea that, well, coaches have a big spreadsheet of picks and bans, and that's what they do. Talking to him there, he said, well, what's the issue? Trifecta, he's like, look, we have to learn the early game, and I think that we did the majority of that. Yesterday, you notice what he said. He spent 10 games just practicing mid-game and late game. So they're doing very specific practice, and I think that's very, very important to improving as a team. Scrimming all day, sure, but you gotta practice with purpose.
Yes.
And I think that's really what transforms a team.
And he understood some of the weaknesses and flaws of his teammates. He mentioned on the interview saying how there needs to be an improvement on decision making.
Right.
And in that last set against United, you can tell game number 1, where Trifecta did have the lead, they found so many kills, they got super overzealous trying to go for the total end instead of respecting some of these respawn timers, guaranteeing themselves a fire giant.
At the same time, also notice some holes open for PK. While 3-0, 3-1 might be the overzealous, confident thing that you need to say for your team as a coach, I think he was realistic in saying that there are some spots that you can punish Pittsburgh Knights. Look, they're all great players, and that's absolutely going to be a thing, but maybe you can kind of hold their communication down against them or some of their decision-making. And that's what Trifecta's going to look to do. Bans already done. No Shibalanke, Merlin, Cirquette, or Reditasker. Pittsburgh focusing on Weekend, as they said, and King Arthur will be the first choice.
Poor Ducky, man. Again, he has to face off against King Arthur. Yesterday against Benji's Arthur. Today against Deathwalker's Arthur. The list just goes on and on for Ducky. But like you were saying before about seeing some of the weaknesses from PK, I think if Dignitas showed the weaknesses of PK, it was the over-aggression at times and being able to be at the right place at the right time because of their own vision. So if Trifecta was watching that set with PK versus Dignitas, they need to know where adapting is going to gank and be ready for it and have the necessary numbers to match it.
Kamazats and Terra will be the selections here for Trifecta. The Batman has been I don't want to say long time, it's been a couple of weeks, but the long time answer to King Arthur in that lane. Can you beat him up? A little bit, but it's more about matching sustain with sustain, and the Terra can also kind of punish him as well. Multiple abilities, quick hits, pop that Terra ult nice and early in the team fight. So Trifecta have 2 selections that they think will fare well against the King. Pittsburgh Knights now dipping into their bank time to figure out the rest of their first draft. And it will be a Naja, likely in the jungle in the hands of Adapting. And Freya will be selected as well.
You say that it could be for Adapting, but it's also potentially a
EmilZy.
support pick. Yeah, EmilZy, if he wants to run it to enable an easier time for Vote playing the Freya, then you run the Naja there, you look for some early kills. But the way supports have been playing recently in the past couple of weeks is the supports are not in the dueling anymore to start. They're actually either invading the enemy speed buff or looking to assist their soul laner with the blue.
Even in the mid lane, we've seen supports move as well, so very amorphous starts coming out from different teams, and Naja's ambiguity can certainly be a part of what Pittsburgh Knights want to bring to the table with that, in that respect. Trifecta now, finishing off their first half of the draft. Wei will be the carry of choice here, or the hunter of choice for the carry, most likely. And as we get into our second round of bans, King Arthur, Naja, Freya for Pittsburgh Knights, and Zatz, Terra, Wei for Trifecta. If I'm Trifecta, I'm looking... I don't know if I'm looking at the Guardian role, because like you said, Naja can flex.
Sure.
I think I'm mostly looking towards... Oh man, there's so much... King Arthur's
Like,
going to play solo.
Maybe an authentic mid player is
Sure.
what you're really worried about. Like, whatever Trifecta doesn't want to pick for mid, ban whatever's remaining, right? So, like, if you're picking Raijin right now, maybe ban Discordia.
At the same time, Freya could easily go in
That's
that mid
true,
lane
too.
as well. There's a lot of... You know what this is? Pittsburgh Knights can sort of go, all right, we have Naja and Freya, and depending on what they ban, that's who's going to play
Flex it, yeah.
That's who's going to play it.
Freya was played last game by Heroin there. Struggled a lot against the likes of his opponents there, knowing how aggressive Splice was with their front line. So if Trifecta do see Zyrhoes playing the Freya, which knowing Zyrhoes, you never really know what he's going to be playing anyway, maybe play something aggressive for weekends to try to dive that Freya.
That's why I like the ban of the Amusing Cobb here. Freya can play both that long lane and the mid lane, and the Amusing Cobb can play both the long lane and the mid lane. So kind of negating that, I think, is a nice choice. 3 bans directly at Weekend, and a new offer flavor. So Trifecta.
Surprised it's not a 4th ban. The early strategy was, by Deathwalker's words, saying ban out Weekend, and the
Yeah.
first 3 bans did dictate that. The 4th ban, which I'm expecting to be locked in as the last pick, should be a Mercury. The global pressure is going to be kind of annoying for PK to handle, and with the Discordia now for Lasbra, whatever 1v1 matchup is going to be in the soul lane between Arthur and Camazotz, I'm expecting it to be. I think that should push Ducky a little bit further on that edge.
I see it. It's certainly a possibility. And so Pittsburgh Knights now on the clock, looking for a Daji, which is a pick that Adapting has looked really strong on. Raijin for the mid lane would confirm Freya in the hands of Vote, and Naja in the hands of the support player. And so watching this, I think Rowe wants to lock this in. Coach Rowe, of course, will change things up. It'll be a Giannis selection, a character that we haven't seen too much of, but there is no replacement for the God of Doors.
Exactly, especially when you're diving so aggressively. I think PK could be looking for a strategy that they shut down Lasbra, a newer player in the mid role that I think has made a decent transition thus far, has had some questionable moments of his positioning, and I think if he can fix that positioning errors, then Trifecta can just elevate to the next level, but Giannis isn't going to make it easier for him.
Pittsburgh Knights really thinking about these last 2 choices. The jungle mid combo, as it's been exposed now.
No one can extinguish my flame.
Pele will be coming through for the jungle. And then that Giannis, the Raijin, the original Raijin, will get locked in. And it's interesting, Pele rearing her head one more time, got nerfed a bunch, and then kind of disappeared. We saw some play out of it in the last set. We're going to see some play out of it in this set as well.
Sino game number 1 had a fantastic showing on the Pele. Really showed off the true damage potential on this Polynesian jungler that has so much mobility. And I think that when you're dealing with Trifecta, that is going to be aggressive at level 1, try to harass your speed. Eonic specifically on the Terra did that yesterday against United. That even if you don't receive your speed buff, I don't think you can truly shut down a Pele in the jungle.
It will be interesting. It certainly will be. Trifecta discussing it over now.
It's got to be Mercury.
It could be a Camazotz for the jungle.
Could be.
Of course.
But not, Ducky's played it so much
Exactly.
that he just has more experience with it than
I agree. I expect Ducky to play on the Camazotz. Just keeping the options honest and open. Wowy nodding his head here. Not wearing the flannel. Totally. How will that affect today's game?
It might be better. It might be the key to success.
I think that would upset Wowy very much. He shows up with that flannel all the time. I don't know if it's the same one, but certainly that Wowy flair that we're we're now used to. Ducky just listening. So that I think that is Kamazot's for the young man.
You want global pressure here. For your
Where is his
jungler.
fan? You see his
Yeah.
hair?
So it's like to the left of Ducky, somewhere there. It's got to be global pressure because you need to shut down Freya. So I'm looking at Thanatos, Thor, Mercury, Rathusker's band.
Athena?
Mercury.
And there's the Mercury. There's the Mercury. That's the that's the one that I had in my mind. That's the one that you had in your mind. That's the one that Pittsburgh Knights did not ban out, and that's the one that we've seen Weekend play successfully on before. So the fastest god alive will be the choice of jungler for Trifecta, and they'll be going head-to-head against Pittsburgh Knights, who have Pele in the jungle, who's also quite fast for what it's worth.
I'm thinking game number 2 yesterday, United versus Trifecta, where we can play the Robin, and he sat on that dual lane for so long. So I'm expecting a similar process today against this Freya from Boat.
Certainly could be the option. King Arthur, he's on the table. Will he topple the Batman? We'll see one more time. Trifecta, Pittsburgh Knights. The start of the set is now.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Totally. Finch and Taco here as we get ready to move into game number 1. And I need someone to fact check me on this one. I feel like Ducky's had to play against King Arthur more than anybody. Someone on Trifecta is not sold on how good King Arthur is yet.
It might be Ducky even who doesn't feel as though
I
King
doubt
Arthur.
it.
I mean, it's just Deathwalker is King Arthur.
That's all it
what
is,
could go
right?
wrong, Finch?
Yeah, that guy's not insanely good at Smite or anything like that, right? So definitely no problems. But it's often with this Kamaz, that's how they paired up against it, and they feel good in that matchup. Obviously, he has plenty of damage, the sustain to try and stick there with him. But is Mercury high pressure enough of a jungler for them to sit on top of this King Arthur and slow down Deathwalker?
Mercury is there, I think, more so to serve the purpose of global positioning threat, because if the King Arthur does try to look for some of those early dives or even just trying to hug Ducky's tower line, then Weekend, as soon as he gets that Sonic Boom online, could look for some potential punish there. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, though, because, I mean, it's Deathwalker and it's King Arthur, but I definitely think that between the Terra and the Mercury and the Kamazots, there might be a little bit of potential there to stop Deathwalker in his tracks.
Well, we saw in some of our other sets earlier today and yesterday that the supports are spending a lot of time in solo lane. That's where they've been starting lately. So maybe that is where we'll see Eonic spend some time. And like you said, that Terra might be enough where they can cause some problems for this King Arthur. But that's a very clear thread to follow. Is Deathwalker going to have the kind of impact on here that we know he's capable of? Variety made the big play with the 1v4. He comes to mind. Now it's Deathwalker's chance to show he can line up.
This is a little out of the norm, though, for Trifecta, having Eonic start in solo with Ducky. And it doesn't even seem as though they're looking for the invade. They just want to try and clear creeps. But Wowy and Boat, as far as the 1v1 is concerned, Jingwei, Freya's probably going to get the better end of the early lane pressure just because she can clear so much easier. But I don't really expect too much action to happen at a duo.
Well, the invade attempt did eventually come through. Eonic's the one they sent down. As this has kind of become a little bit of the new norm, it's so hard to say because it's so amorphous, and it can change week to week because we don't see everyone play every week, so it can also just depend on which teams there are there too. But this is something we've seen at least on Thursday and for most of Friday. You bring these supports over here, and they split the waves with these solos, try and steal farm, and see if they can get ahead there, and leave these hunters just to chill and duo.
Well, Deathwalker won't even have to worry about the first Totem of Q. EmilZy going to go ahead and take care of that one for him. And I'm right there with you, Finch. It does feel more and more like teams are starting to be a little bit more relaxed as far as where the support is located early on, and a lot of these supports are just starting to feel like jungler number 2.
That is a lot how it's feeling. I mean, last game, Aurora was playing the Hercules in the previous set, and he was just running around, bullying, trying to keep any fun from being had by Heroine in the middle lane. So, yes, not unlike another jungler. But here's Weekend carving his own path, ganking the duo lane, a thing that feels almost unspoken of nowadays. They usually just get to farm over here by themselves. But he'll meet a Freya, and that's not easy.
I think Weekend just wanted to split a little bit of farm with Wowy. As far as kill potential is concerned, Vote just way too healthy and topped up for any serious threat out of a level 2 Mercury to arise.
Right. Without, special delivery and everything available, he doesn't have the most potential. But look at that, Adapting showing some face here. And he's on the Pele. This is something we saw Sino play to great effect in our last set as well, but couldn't quite have the best game in game number 5 for it. We'll see if Adapting can do the same thing. A ton of dive potential here from this Pele.
I think that's the number one thing that I'm really keeping in the back of my mind as we watch this set continue. Eonic, underneath a little bit of pressure here, adapting, finds a solid knockup, could be first one onto Eonic.
He's in some trouble, but the sprint is there. The last few hits from Zyrhoes don't make it, but the auto does. Eonic goes down. The Knights are on the board with kill number 1.
That's the zoning ability, by the way. You force them against the wall, so you know the auto is going to connect.
Exactly. Galaxy Brain plays there from Zyrhoes, and it ends up working out to the tune of a first blood. The Weekend will come down for this blue buff. I believe they successfully got this last time with Eonic. At the very least, Deathwalker never grabbed it, but Weekend's in some trouble. Sash lands, Beads gets him away from the knockup, and he just barely makes it out of there. Though Adapting still chasing, couldn't quite get it done.
That puck being just a little bit off the mark there for EmilZy. If he'd found the ring bounce, I think the slow would have still applied because Weekend's beads were wearing off, but fortunately enough, special delivery sometimes can be good enough. I'm surprised, though, that Pittsburgh Knights didn't even bother trying to contest Trifecta's blue buff.
Right,
but
especially
Ducky
with him low.
Probably going to be happy to know that Weekend was able to not only strip away Deathwalkers, but confirm his as well.
You're right, EmilZy and Adapting got out of there almost immediately once that fight was over, so they truly had no aspirations to go grab the buff. You can see Ducky has the advantage for a little while here. For one, I doubt anyone is more seasoned playing against King Arthur than him, so that's one advantage in his column. The other is that Deathwalker hasn't had a chance to back and get Glad Shield, and that's much more real as an issue for him. Once he has that, he should be able to hang no problem.
You think it's possible that if Ducky just keeps having to play against King Arthur for long enough that he eventually just becomes the counter to King Arthur?
I think so, that like eventually Ducky will just know the ins and outs of the matchup so well, because again, I think he's forced to play it more than anyone else. He'll be the one that just knows how to beat this god. I think so.
All right, now Deathwalker's got Ducky up in the air, but this is all just poke pressure, baby. Absolutely slap boxing in the solo lane, and it's territory that King Arthur is all too familiar with.
Yeah, very likely no one in any actual danger of dying over here, especially not when Ducky still had the ultimate snowfall back. There was a small skirmish between Weekend and Adapting in the jungle, but looks like not much came of it. Remember, Weekend's got to be careful. He had to use his beads on this last gank or invade attempt they made on the blue buff on the solo side, so if Adapting catches him out again in this next minute, it could be trouble.
Well, Adapting's also got company this time around. EmilZy right there with him, but Weekend nowhere nearby looking for that blue buff attempt, and maybe this was the idea from Trifecta, kind of fake out Pittsburgh Knights into thinking that there's going to be repeated invades on that blue. But Trifecta weren't able to like punish elsewhere. I thought maybe they went aggressive in mid. Right now, Ducky's having to play defensive in solo.
That was an easy ultimate force. Yes, it takes a big commitment. You had the jungler and the support here, but now with that ultimate down, Deathwalker actually does have a bit of kill potential here in the lane. If he wants to at least try and pressure him out and maybe force him back off his teleport timer. So we'll see if Deathwalker tries to capitalize, as elsewhere on the map, Trifecta have been largely quiet. We haven't seen them do much. Weekend kind of poked his head in the lane once in duo, but that's about it.
A little bit more preoccupied, I think, on the mid Harpies. Trifecta's done a pretty solid job at reconfirming those left side ones over and over again. I think even the right side mid Harpies have been problematic for Zyrhoes to try and contest, just because Eonic has hung around mid lane since his first death.
But this is an important set for the Knights, Taco, because they just had that tough loss against Dig. They're maybe feeling like they're not quite performing at the level that they expect from themselves. And this is a set where they're heavily favored, and they should be able to come out and cleanly win it unless Trifecta step up above what we've seen from them so far. And so that means there is some pressure on them to come in and actually make sure they execute. I was like, are you guys ready to come in and, grab a win here? I mean, after the tough game you had yesterday, and he goes, Rose said, I don't even want to talk about it unless we actually win, until we're done, because we know we have to come in and execute.
All Adapting, trying to help get a little bit of executing going on in the dual lane, but it's just going to be another lane soak. Weekend did the same exact move.
That's right.
It seems as though both of these junglers just kind of struggling to find actual punishing points, because neither of these hunters is willing to step up past that halfway mark.
I mean, dual lane's getting plenty of farm. We call it dual lane. We got to call long lane, at least for now, because there's so much farm from them over there. Certainly they could spare half a wave or so to their jungler, but this could be trouble. Eonic making the rotation, so is Weekend, and that is the ultimate just used from Deathwalker. But with him getting right back to tower, no trouble there. Instead, they'll fight over the blue buff. Eonic drops the ultimate right away. Sash now down for EmilZy, and he's locked down. Easy kill for Weekend as they finally answer back.
Love that placement of the monolith from Eonic. Keeps Adapting at bay, while at the same time prevents EmilZy from looking for an exit point to his T2 tower. So Eonic might have missed a stun onto Deathwalker, but the fact that they still found a trade-up kill or a pick and the blue buff,
Right.
it's going to hurt Deathwalker.
Exactly. They did give up first blood a while ago, so I guess you can call it eventually an even backup. But you're right, that was just a clean pick for them in this matchup, so one they desperately needed. As Ducky does still hold a pretty significant advantage, a full level over Deathwalker here in the solo lane, so not too bad at all for the Camazotz.
And this is kind of what you expect. Whenever the Camazotz matchup does go favorably for the solo laner, Ducky might get the lane bully pressure, but as far as translating that into a team fight is concerned, that's where King Arthur might start to have a little bit more of an impact. Deathwalker isn't going to look to be the standout star in the solo lane. I mean, it's a solo lane. You're just there to farm, but I think that these team fights could be extremely problematic if Deathwalker isn't continued to be suppressed.
What they're going to have to try and make use of is the fact that Weekend can make these big surprise ganks from long range, that there's even some potential for chase down with Ducky when he goes up to the ultimate. It can kind of go a little bit further than everyone else since he's so safe up there. They're going to have to play around their potential to kill off those stragglers on the back of fights. And like you said, not going to be able to match kind of the impact Deathwalker can have just by sitting in the back.
I think that was a solo kill for Ducky if he connected with the vampiric bats, by the way. Hit the Screech, but you need those bats, that huge chunk of damage. I feel as though that's probably, second ability is the one that Ducky would probably be prioritizing to max out since it would provide some of the better sustain.
Is this a rotation? Ducky making his presence felt, adapting now, might get caught out, and that damage is certainly there. Forces out the Volcanic Lightning defensively. Now it's EmilZy who's been stunned, but the rest of Trifecta done with this engagement. A small win for Trifecta as Ducky rotates over, strips away a little bit of farm, and force out the ult from adapting.
Weekend, though, being mindful of Deathwalker's positioning, and Deathwalker, unfortunately enough for himself, not going to be able to confirm his own blue buff. Ducky, though, still on the run. EmilZy catches him out with a sash, but still not willing to invest the Windfire wheels.
And Ducky still happy to take this trade. He's got tons of sustain available, but Weekend's nearby. He's still not worried about Ducky. He's focusing entirely on the totem. Now he's looking to come in, but at this point it's too late. Ducky's already had the ultimate forced out.
But the totem coup will go down one more time in Trifecta's favor, and Weekend's going to be able to dash right on out of there. It's not like Deathwalker has any serious kill potential against this Mercury. He's already invested most of his cooldowns into just trying to aggress against Ducky. But I like that play from Trifecta. They didn't find a pick onto adapting, but just by Ducky's presence simply being there in mid, it allows for Mercury to invade the back card piece.
Now Ducky's in some trouble. Remember, he does not have the ultimate here. Sonic Boom is good at catching out Deathwalker. They go right to adapting, who's also without the ultimate. His bead's forced out, and now Deathwalker stuck in a risky trade. He's able to spin his way around and get out of there, though. In the end, ultimate's used, but no one falls.
Ducky and Weekend just couldn't decide who to actually commit to, whether it was adapting or Deathwalker, so everybody just gets to walk away for free in the end. And I mean, I don't think Pittsburgh Knights really mind, because if anything, it looks as though Ducky's got a pretty firm grasp over the solo lane, and Deathwalker should probably just be happy he hasn't ended up dying yet.
I just wonder if they have to use any ultimates there, if Weekend comes off the totem a little bit sooner and just kind of pushes Deathwalker back. Remember, Ducky had his bat out of hell forced, and I think that's why adapting in Deathwalker without seeing where Weekend was felt like they had a chance to gank. And because of that, Weekend has to use his Sonic Boom just to get in there and even things back up. If he like steps off it for a second and then goes back and confirms, maybe none of that happens, as now Ducky in a 1v2 that's about to turn into a 1v3. EmilZy on the way as well. He does have Bat of the Hell, and that gets him out of there, but no, he wants to go back in. They make it back to the tier 1, so no more damage.
The player discipline just a little bit stronger there for Ducky. As bloodthirsty as he probably was for adapting, going for that dive with the Bat of the Hell, sure, he might have found it, but trading out when you're the one with the lead is never a good look.
That's exactly right, and Ducky shows some restraint, and now they have a chance for an actual gain for the team, which could be an invade on the blue buff. Playing this one very safely, though, is Trifecta. They're letting just Eonic go in, because now Zyrhoes is rotated, and he's going to have plenty of damage. Earth and Fury has to come out, and now Eonic getting chunked. He ends up falling. Very oddly played there by Trifecta.
Seeing a lot of blue on my screen right now, Finch, and Trifecta maybe not expecting the 4-man rotation from Pittsburgh Knights. But Lasbra, on the bright side, has just kind of been free farming, which is exactly what you want out of your Discordia. Discordia, I think, normally one of the easier mages to try and punish early on. This is good for Trifecta that Lasbra hasn't been the center of attention yet, and all of this diversion to solo lane, even though it's put Ducky kind of in the crossfire, in the crosshairs, I still think that Pittsburgh Knights aren't really sure of where else to look on the map right now other than solo.
They've just been coming over here to the same place Trifecta has showed presence. If you can make it through this early to mid game nicely, I guess that's good. Freya feels more like that early to mid kind of monster where she gets pressure so well. So if you can kind of skip by all that, and now you have yourself a late game Jingwei who will likely build some crit, that's certainly not bad. But that was just such a weird engagement for you around the blue buff. Eonic seemed way more willing to commit to that steal than Ducky and Weekend. They just kind of watched.
I think that was an instance of Eonic not realizing that it was more than just Zyrhoes who had rotated or who was local to the blue buff then. So Trifecta immediately disengaged after realizing that there's 4 bodies there of Pittsburgh, and sometimes it's just, you just gotta hold that L as a support.
Sometimes, yeah, and like you said, without having all the information that time, that maybe he gets a little bit punished. Adapting yet again, though, lurking in the jungle. Ducky still has ult, so not in too much danger, not until that's forced. He even holds on to it. Just the leap is enough for him to get out of there.
Keep in mind, though, every single one of these rotations Adapting has made, he's been here to not only put a little bit of poke damage on a Ducky, but he's soaking the waves. It's splitting the XP for Deathwalker, and Trifecta are just going to look at the Gold Fury instead.
Well, they know where the Pele is. This forces Vote to a bad spot. His beads are pulled immediately in the banish. Off the mark, Gold Fury still leashed. But look at Vote in the 1v3. He finds a weak and a little bit of help from the Gold Fury. Never hurts. Zyrhoes brings him in, and Vote puts him down. That's a double for the Freya.
But the good Aegis out of Zyrhoes is going to keep him safe and sound from that golden apple damage. Adapting, looking to collapse fully onto Lasbra, even through the persisting gust. There's no peeling this Pele off of that Discordia. Gold Fury also winds up falling in favor of Pittsburgh Knights, and what looked as though it might have been a promising Gold Fury just ends up as disaster for Trifecta.
Yeah, 3 for 0, and the Gold Fury is never the look as Trifecta go down. And there were some people criticizing Vote's play in their set yesterday, and I think what we're seeing right now is that Vote is here to show that that's an aberration, man. He's always such a consistently strong player, whatever team he's on, and he's the one that has to be that last line of defense in the 1v3 before the rest of the team gets there. He absolutely did it.
And a small micromanage on that last play as well, but EmilZy looking for the sash, that way Vote gets the uninterrupted poke damage against Wowy with those Freya autos after proccing that first ability. It's honestly wild. Like, the small things that pros will do throughout a match that I think most people probably wouldn't realize as being a positive or helpful in any way, but it is interesting to think like how much setup Pittsburgh Knights get from this Ninja sash alone.
Just like that, this game now favoring the Knights, and they'll make it worse with the Pyromancer. Trifecta are nearby, but they're nowhere near in there in time. They're trying to slow down the actual grab of the objective, and the Knights fall back with a free win. Just off that play, it feels like they're able to grab so much of a lead. Remember, they do still have the experience lead from Ducky over Deathwalker, but that feels like about it. I mean, Zyrhoes is ahead of Lasbra now, EmilZy out in front of Eonic, everyone else about even. I mean, Knights are feeling good.
It was just a barrage of punches all at once. Pittsburgh Knights, the problem with these seasoned teams, Finch, is you give them an inch, they're going to take the full mile and more. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that it's not even so much the goal that they gain from the initial Gold Fury, but it's also the opening, the freeing up of the map pressure, because now Trifecta can't even really afford to just freely traverse through that Gold Fury pit, because you never know where to expect Adapting might be hiding around a corner, or Zyrhoes even. Zyrhoes having the freedom now to begin looking for some of these early game rotations, because he doesn't have to worry about being pinned down in mid since Gold's already gone.
Exactly. It's so funny. I was just talking about how maybe it's nice not to worry about this mid-game Freya for a while with all this solo lane focus. And then the second they go take that fight at the Gold Fury, who rotates over but a mid-game Freya who's ready to start rocking and rolling right towards the end of the laning phase. EmilZy picks a target early on. It's Eonic up in the air. We can consider the ultimate, but drops it right away, and Eonic's already gone. Deathwalker cleans up the kill, and Weekend never finds an opportunity to get in. Now Ducky in some trouble. Adapting hunts him down, and right up into the air for Avalon, for Camelot, and a double kill now for Deathwalker.
And Vote has no intentions of slowing down either. Lasbra, the only Trifecta member in sight, and he's looking like he's about to fall just like all the rest. Great banish from Vote, gonna keep Lasbra stuck up in the air long enough to meet his demise at the ground.
Well, Weekend The last one that's still actually in the engagement. Wowy has just made it in with that rapid reincarnation, but with his jungler forced out by Deathwalker, there's really realistically nothing they can get done here. In fact, Weekend got to be careful. Special delivery finally gets him out of there. But what another big fight from the Knights. They're just aggressing into the jungle of Trifecta.
I can't even really call it a fight so much as it is just Pittsburgh Knights rolling over Trifecta. Eonic has just looked like paper, and we did just get confirmation from production. Adapting lived in that engagement with 12 HP.
That's insane, man. I mean, that's the adapting effect, isn't it? That he's able to just skirt on out of there. Blackthorn certainly doesn't hurt. An extra 450 gives you a lot more chances.
But it's got to hurt Trifecta to see, because the one positive that could have been a positive out of that entire engagement and adapting able to just shy away on out of there, it does get a little discouraging, especially when you're already getting beat down.
And just like that, Deathwalker did exactly what you alluded to earlier, right? Which has become the solo laner with more impact when the fight started. So yes, Ducky was the one with the level and a half lead, but now all of a sudden it's Deathwalker who's 2-0-2, getting double kills and completing off and forcing out Weekend early on. And all of a sudden now he has the experience lead and everything's favoring Deathwalker. That early game Ducky enjoyed is almost a distant memory.
Well, it also comes right back to what we were just talking about. Zyrhoes being able to make early game rotations. He can afford to lead the mid lane to try and push into Eonic. And I think that was only one iteration of the Percussive Storm too, and it just destroyed Eonic's health. He just doesn't really have a whole lot of protections online just yet, at least not for magical defense, not as much as you want. Gauntlet of Thieves is nice, so is Reinforced Greaves, but it's not tanky enough, especially as a Terra who relies a little bit on that self-sustain, and when that's not available because Zyrhoes has Divine Ruin already, what are you really left with other than dying?
It's this early pen for sure, right? The Spear the Magus and the Divine Ruin that really is hurting Eonic. Sonic Boom off the mark, but it does get wicked close, but what a sash from EmilZy, who turns his head on a swivel and saves his teammate life. Vote makes up into the air and finds a return damage. Apple off the mark, and now Wowy going forward with the ultimate, but it's kills coming in for Pittsburgh Knights. Adapting takes down Weekend, and they already lost Lasbra. Vote standing still, big stun coming through, and Ducky can't find it either. That's a double coming the way of Adapting and Zyrhoes.
One by one, every single Trifecta member is falling. Eonic, the only survivor for the moment, but Adapting and Deathwalker don't really seem like they're willing to let this Terra live. It's not even like Pittsburgh Knights are looking for the Primal Fury either. They're inside of Trifecta's Phoenix, killing Eonic.
Goodness gracious. I can think of no good reason why he shouldn't keep going, by the way, so it's right that he did. EmilZy and Zyrhoes now trying to be the ones to start up this Fire Giant. This isn't enhanced yet, so it's not the nightmare fuel that we've seen some of the other times around the EFG, and now they'll switch it over. It'll be Vote that's tanking it. This is still maybe not ideal, as they'll take quite a bit of damage on this one. They need a little bit more help, but it'll finally go down.
I think Pittsburgh Knights are just barely going to manage to finish this one out or pull that one through. EmilZy and Zyrhoes, though, a little bit closer than what people would find comfortable. But hey, it's a Fire Giant, and it's at the 20-minute mark, by the way. Just this game went from being a stalemate and arguably Trifecta even a little bit in the lead to just completely favoring Pittsburgh Knights. And
it's 5 minutes ago.
It's just Vote. This game is all Vote.
Yes, the impact he had on the fray is big, but I really think the play that he and EmilZy make on the Gold Fury is that turning point for me, because that was the right call on paper, right? That Smite 101, that when they gank solo, you go to gold, and Vote just makes the play. Apple eventually bounces back to Deathwalker. He'll finally fall. It takes the entirety of Trifecta to kill him, and they don't even get the Oni.
It's something, though, and it's a start for Trifecta, which is really important because even though they might not necessarily be able to look at this Oni Fury and try to confirm it away from Pittsburgh Knights, since the Knights have the Fire Giant right now, I still think that this buys Trifecta a little bit of time, and it makes the 4v5 at least somewhat reasonable.
You're right. It buys them an extra 30 seconds. They don't have to worry about Deathwalker, and strips him of the Fire Giant buff itself. Oni's quite low. Trifecta actually grabbed the objective. Now the question becomes, how can they fight on the back end? Adapting comes in, but doesn't find much there. It's Eonic who's low as EmilZy chases him. But Zyrhoes in some trouble. Ducky has found him on the back line of this fight. He goes right up into the bat out of hell, but Thunder Crash gets him out of there, and he misses the last shot. That means now Ducky's too far forward.
Ducky is trying to teleport out in time, but Adapting, looking for the knock-up, and it's good. Teleport has been interrupted. Ducky trying to find the collapse onto Zyrhoes, but it's too little too late. All of Pittsburgh Knights have already surrounded that bat, and he is just dead. That's it. There's nothing more to it.
And that is a rough fall that Ducky ends up taking there. They at least got the Oni, they at least got the kill on the Deathwalker, but now they lose their own solo laner in Tree when he can't quite clean up the kill onto Zyrhoes. I think really just that last shot that he misses is enough to allow the Raijin to escape. And now it's Pittsburgh Knights with all the pressure.
I think Ducky shouldn't have second-guessed himself on the dive to Zyrhoes, and even after he missed the Vampiric Bats, Zyrhoes used the escape. You commit there. You know that the only other possible outcome is for the rest of Pittsburgh Knights to come collapse you at the T2, T1 tower mark, so may as well get somewhat of a trade-off. Pulling Zyrhoes' Aegis there simply isn't enough, because by the time that Aegis is done being off cooldown, I don't think Trifecta are going to have any aggressive moments that they can really look to punish Zyrhoes for that.
Exactly, and there might even just be some inherent value in forcing them to chase you further away from the objectives anyway, right? Even if Ducky can't quite find Zyrhoes in that situation, at least force the rest of Knights to chase him to get the punish, so maybe some other options there, as unfortunately Ducky couldn't make it out. But now this game all lining up for the Knights. They're 12,000 gold out in front, only 23 minutes in. And you saw the last time we looked at the charts, right around the 15-minute mark, this game was basically dead even. And just since then, just in 8 minutes, they've pushed that lead out to nearly 12,000 in their favor. I mean, it happened almost all at once.
No one is safe right now. Ducky, he's the same level as EmilZy. All of Pittsburgh Knights have already hit that level 20 mark. This T2 tower not looking like it's going to be around for much longer, but probably, well, hold that thought though, because Eonic might end up dying here for being this far pushed up with Ducky.
He's been sashed by EmilZy, who immediately takes him up into the air. Ducky forgoes helping Eonic, instead looks to the back line, but the tier 2 tower already down, which means it's a lot less safe to be there. Eonic barely gets out on the right-hand side, and Trifecta have 2 members that aren't even here. Wowy and Weaken were off pushing elsewhere. That means this right side Phoenix fully exposed, already below half HP. Ducky comes through, Sonic Boom's there, but 1 beads is enough.
Zyrhoes still has Taiko drums if needed, but EmilZy's going to find a kill onto Ducky, no problem whatsoever. Both, though, in a little bit of trouble up into the Valkyrie's discretion, trying to find the collapse onto Wowy, but it's just not enough. Wowy barely making it back into base.
But can we say the same for the right side? Phoenix, it's in trouble. Taiko drums should create some space from Zyrhoes, but where are the carries putting in the damage? Looks like they can't quite get Wowy into range, so maybe they won't get this right side Phoenix. In fact, Deathwalker in some trouble. Trifecta, hold on, and force Pittsburgh Knights out of there. That's not the cleanest thing I've ever seen, but that Phoenix is still standing.
It wasn't pretty, but it worked.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're this far behind, you take what you can get. Beggars cannot be choosers, and Trifecta probably just happy that that Phoenix managed to hang in there, but I think that Trifecta made the right steps. I love the Eonic's patience with not throwing out the Terra's Blessing when he was initially under duress in that right side lane before the T2 tower was sieged by Pittsburgh Knights. Because he held onto that cooldown, they were able to utilize it on the actual right Phoenix defense, and it made it too complicated for Adapting to stay in range, because he's the real, I think, damage dealer to these Phoenixes. Vote's on Freya. If Vote was any physical hunter, that Phoenix is gone. But because he's playing the Freya, it's not going to be an easy time for Vote or Zyrhoes to get reasonable damage into that Phoenix in time. So it's understandable how Trifecta were able to hold. The question is, can they continue to repeat that? Because it's going, they need to all be alive if they want these Phoenix defenses to continue going successfully.
Or at least a significant numbers advantage in favor of their team, as that was probably the last free fire giant of the game. It will be the enhanced one from now on. And we've already seen how difficult those can be, but I'm surprised at how willing Trifecta are to take this 5v5. They've already stepped forward. EmilZy goes right past Eonic and directly into the back line. It's Wowy who's in trouble. An immediate dash away, but Adapting's already found Lasbra. Vote gets to Wowy from up top. Ducky in some trouble as well. That bat's out of hell, but where can he run? Right chasing him is Zyrhoes. Blink over the wall is nice, but he's going to be in trouble either way.
Oh no, Ducky blinks over the wall right into an absolute catastrophe. Full on DSI now, and a triple kill for Vote. It just snuck up on us with that one. But the right side Phoenix that Pittsburgh Knights could not siege with all 5 Trifecta members alive, it's going to be no problem when they're all dead.
Exactly. What an impressive game from the Pittsburgh Knights. And what they did is they stuck in there. Deathwalker was losing a little bit in that solo lane matchup up against Ducky. There was a lot of pressure from Trifecta on that blue buff time and time again, but it did not phase the Knights. Vote rotated over on that Freya, farmed and ready to go, defended the Gold Fury. It was downhill from there.
Finch, you might call me crazy for this one, but
Go ahead.
I kind of understand why Trifecta weren't banning the King Arthur. I don't think King Arthur was a problem in that game. I think that it was solely Freya. That Freya was just all too problematic. By the time Wowy was able to even match DPS, it was just a little bit too late into the match, and by then Adapting was just able to one-shot him, or at least put him into a low enough HP threshold that Vote's Valkyrie's discretion could clean up the pieces.
I agree. I think it would be irresponsible to say there was just one thing that went wrong for Trifecta and try and zone in on one thing, right? So we can't just say it was just the King Arthur or anything like that. There were several things that didn't quite click for them, but it is curious, right, that they're so comfortable letting it through. Even though they're getting ahead early, it still does King Arthur things later on. They've got to clean up a couple things. The objective secure is one thing that comes to mind. I don't know why they took that team fight around the FG. At least let them pull it. Enhance Fire Giant's tough. Make them get on it. I don't know.
I also feel as though they weren't really able to utilize that Camazotz nearly as much as they wanted to.
Sure.
We saw glimpses of Ducky being able to collapse Zyrhoes, but overall, I just don't think he was able to find it consistently enough.
And certainly not enough for them to be able to find the win. That is the first game in favor of the Knights, but there's still plenty more to go. A potentially 5-game set. Let's get it back over to the desk so they can break down how that went.
Thanks a lot, guys. And that went in Pittsburgh Knights' direction. 1-0 so far in the series. And as we look at Trifecta and what they can do to clean things up, I think we've got a laundry list. And that alone is probably the number one problem.
I think so. Weekend on the Mercury didn't do as much as I thought he would in the early game. He
Same.
made his rotation in the duel lane around that level 2, level 3 marker. He kind of looked at Votes very menacingly on the Freya, but he never really did anything afterwards. He just kind of split farm with Wowy, which kind of hurt his farm. In the solo lane, however, he did deny a couple of blue buffs against Deathwalker, which was a good start to allow Ducky the freedom to get a 2-level lead. Ducky was level 9 while Deathwalker was still level 7, but didn't really do anything from there with that advantage between any objectives. And that's where Trifecta started to falter around team fights because some of the damage from PK was just too much to handle. Zyrhoes on the Ryzen, Vote on the Freya, and then all of a sudden Adapting on the Pele is making his presence felt as well.
I mean, this is, excuse me, this is just a team fighting team. Pittsburgh Knights, we heard Dignitas talk about them and say, listen, when it comes to some of the other squads, Splice specifically is one they mentioned, they're unpredictable. SK Gaming are going to do different things. Pittsburgh Knights kind of, you know what they're going to do. Adapting's going to play a high carry potential character. You're going to have some nonsense in the mid lane out of Zyrhoes, and King Arthur's going to do his thing. There's no surprise here. They just play really good Smite. So for Trifecta to kind of counteract that, I think I need to see, kind of their own meta come through or something, but it's just not happening. And this is what happened instead, just all-out farm fest.
It was very clean team fighting in the mid stages. That one team fight around the 15 to 16 minute mark. It was a level 16 Camazotz from Ducky versus a 14 Arthur from Deathwalker, but Arthur had more presence in those team fights, and that's what also allowed a clean deicide almost at the 20-minute mark where literally Deathwalker is diving a middle Phoenix to get the very last kill of the deicide onto Eonic with Adapting trailing right behind him.
7-0-8 for the Jungle Pele, 4-0-7 for Zyrhoes over there in the mid lane Ryzen, and another O/line, 6-0-7 for the Scotsman Vote on the Freya. Fantastic stuff. Very few deaths, only 3 deaths on the side of Knights overall. The damage just wasn't really there coming out from the other side. 25,000 for Ducky, but that's, of course, a solo lane, and the rest of the team didn't really perform.
A lot of poke damage in that lane with all those blue buffs stripped away. I like his presence once he was tower diving the tier 2, trying to kill Zyrhoes in that one skirmish, but he couldn't really get out after the fact. He didn't commit to the Ryzen kill. Got a Aegis, but it was to no avail.
Wowy's going to bring the flannel back for game number 2. Maybe that's what the carry needs to really turn things around here. For me, Trifecta, like I said, there's a number of things that I think went wrong. Some decision-making as far as which team fights to take and when to take them. I think the draft went as well as it could be as far as the picks getting to Trifecta that they wanted. They even were able to take some of their Mercury that they planned on. Really what I'm looking at is I very famously like when teams fight through adversity. I always bring up... was that Dignitas or Eager, the Zatman team that was able to figure out how to beat Kepri? And then you see some other compositions that were able to just beat that dominant god. And here, King Arthur is that god, and we've seen some teams approach it and try to beat that god. First was the Poppies, Team Queso, piloted by Alpha Jackal in the coach role. And then we saw some other teams go, you can have Arthur, we'll either answer with an execute character or the Camazotz. It's not working Okay, I give credit where credit's due to try and face through the adversity, but at the end of the day, it doesn't make you a coward to ban King Arthur. Just get him off the table, and I think Trifecta will have a better look with Ducky having a little bit more freedom.
The problem with Trifecta with that last game in particular was that they were second pick, so they banned away Xbalanque, they banned away Merlin, so that's kind of like pick your poison kind of deal.
Yeah.
Almost to a fault where you can kind of leave more than just Arthur open, right? Leave Merlin and Arthur, whatever PK doesn't grab, you can grab for yourself, right? So there needs to be some more throwaway bans from Trifecta with that in mind.
Merlin has been a look as well that we've seen the Pro League do very well with. He could certainly come up if he's left open. I think Xbalanque would be the wrong choice to leave open. Xbalanque shuts down communication, and for a team, Pittsburgh Knights, who have good communication, and Trifecta is still working on it, I think that kind of lopsides team fights a little bit too much in one direction than the other. So I would like to see some changes as far as the bans are concerned.